Agent Ramona Jones McClain today at 443-660-7131. That's Ramona Jones McClain at 443-660-7131.
We are farmers. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Ricestown Road in Ricestown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB. Hello, welcome to the Insurance Guru Show, where we talk about all things insurance. My name is Ramona Jones McClain, and I'm a farmer's agent at 6 Hanover Road, Ricestown, Maryland. You can call me anytime at 443-660-7131.
All right, you're live in 3, 2, 1, whenever you're ready.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, and we are coming to you live from Ricestown, Maryland, 11707 Ricestown Road, where we talk about all things insurance. Today, as we have been talking about all month, we've been talking about GoFundMe. Oh, sorry about that. Somebody is calling me. GoFundMe. GoFundMe for all kind of reasons. Last week we talked about life insurance. This week we are talking about Medicare and issues with Medicare and issues with things that Medicare is not covering. Today we have with us our specialist, Mr. Jake McGoy, from the Ritter Insurance Marketing Group. Yes, and our special guest also is Miss Alicia Price, who is going to tell us about her GoFundMe page. And I'm going to give us a little background, let her talk about her experience. We found Alicia's GoFundMe page about helping her raise money for medical expenses. 12 years ago, her son had a brain injury, which led to brain damage. He had several issues and getting a wheelchair and a wheelchair ramp and a vehicle to carry him around in.
We can't hear you. There's something going on in the background.
Alicia, you want to mute? Which ultimately put her in a position where she needed to raise money to cover equipment. Lisa, you want to tell us about your situation?
Is there any way you can make me laugh? I need to pull over. Just make me laugh, please.
Well, the show is about your situation, so.
Oh, okay. Well, let me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Yes.
My name is Graylisha Prince, and I'm the mother of Tyrone Stallings. My son is a traumatic global brain damage quadriplegic. Tyrone has been that way since 3/11/2011. His accident was due to a dirt bike collision at the age of 15. I have been the sole caregiver of Tyrone since birth and since the accident. I never nursing homes him. He's in-home service with me. I have full-scale nursing services. I am able to work. I am a full-time mom of 3 total. And Tyrone is now a 27-year-old male, African-American. who still has very much a great sense of humor. And he has limited of speech, but he's able to communicate once you know how he communicates. Tyrone communicates with his right hand, his eyes, his lips, and some vocal verbal words. He can get some sentences here or there, but if he tells you a sentence and you ask him to repeat it, he won't be able to repeat it. You'll have to listen carefully to what he says when he says it. Tyrone aged out Baltimore Public City Schools. He graduated with with hours. He didn't get a degree because of his disabled limitations. I once had Tyrone in medical adult daycare after we aged out of Baltimore City School. Tyrone was going 5 days a week up until the pandemic. After the pandemic, everything stopped. There was no services to anything. But when Tyrone was receiving services, he still wasn't getting quite the same services he was getting when he was a youth in high school. If that makes sense.
It makes completely sense. I have a special needs son, and one of the things that I've been doing a lot of research in is to find programs that can manage the go-betweener. That's what they call them, the go-betweener.
Yes, but the difference between what they give for the youth and what they give for adults, yes, it's totally different.
Yeah,
It's a 360-degree difference.
Like just because they turn 21, they're automatically going to be independent now.
Correct. But when Tyrone was in Baltimore school system services, he was able to get physical therapy, PT, speech, occupational, and learning ability. He was able to stay in a full setting, social status, and he did wonderful. His weight stayed down. He stayed woke during the day and interact. He looked forward to getting out of the house. Also, those services provided a one-on-one nurse to travel him to, from, and stayed with him throughout his travels through school.
Right.
Once he aged as an adult, he no longer got those services. And when we went to Kernan Hospital, they rate their scale ability much different than they do youth. And Tyrone was labeled not a quality. He didn't have enough. They said he was not a quality of services to receive the amount of PT or occupational that he was receiving as a youth. Now, what I don't...
Because he was not going to be getting better.
Basically, in so many words, they're saying that he's never going to be able to walk again, or he's not a quality, is what they say. It's
Right.
not a quality of life. Which basically, at that point, you leave a young male adult due to his limited ability of functions or capacity to be 100% able to do what a normal person does without disabilities. They're still human. They're very much human. And those services allow Tyrone to be in a standard certain many hours. They get allowed him to go to the swimming pool. The school had an indoor swimming pool. Tyrone was going 3 times a week swimming. He was standing in the standard every single day. Tyrone's legs was 100% straight. It kept his feet straight. All his bones stayed in neutral form. His elasticity to his muscles were very loose. We were receiving so much top care that we were receiving less and less of his Botox because of the amount of therapy he was receiving. Also, when Tyrone stood up in a stander, his brain functionality would be much different
Right,
than if he sits in a chair.
right,
So when he goes in neutral position and stand, he almost can walk. He could pull his right leg, but he would start to neurostorm shake. He was very scared to let go because he couldn't figure out how to pull the left leg, if that makes sense.
right. Because he needs repetition in order to be able to functionally do it ongoing.
Right. So Tyrone is labeled a quadriplegic due to partial part of the brain damage,
Right,
not because his spine is broke or damaged.
right. Because
He's TBI.
so Jay,
So
got you there?
Here, I'm here.
Yeah, you heard everything that she said with regards to not just the services. What attracted us to your GoFundMe page was the equipment you were trying to get, which was, I assume, either a van or a ramp to go with the van, on the current van that you have, because you need a lift in order to get the chair in and out of the vehicle for him to be mobile.
and that is correct.
And I know that you talk about services, Medicare does not cover services that start to enter into long-term care, which is activities that allow us to function just on a regular basis. Isn't that right, Jay?
That's correct. Yes. Yep. It's in this, in our medical system in the United States, they generally separate healthcare, what they call healthcare, or health, what health insurance would cover as trying to, solve a illness or a disease, to the extent, as she alluded to, that to the extent that it can be improved on. But yeah, when it comes to things that are more activities of daily living type of issues, they're basically fall into a category that people can buy long-term care insurance for, but that does not actually, it's not covered under normal health insurance. So
Well, you can't buy long-term care insurance for a 15-year-old.
correct. Yeah.
You got at least 40, sometimes 35, depending on the company.
Yes, correct. And to be honest, there's not a lot of companies even really selling long-term care anymore. It's down to only a couple of carriers that sell traditional, and that that is one of the challenges that we face as a country, is that that most states have a Medicaid fund, and that's federally backed, and that's actually costs as much as I think it costs almost as much as Medicare overall across the country that's spent on Medicaid long-term care funding. I'm not super familiar with the ins and outs of it enough to really dive into this case per se, but in general, I understand it, and it's it's a tough situation. I guess questions I would ask if I were meeting this family for the first time and trying to figure out how to help is, has he been approved for Medicare coverage or Medicaid coverage?
Well, if he's disabled, normally by now, he would have, at age 21, he would have shifted from, can you please mute?
Yeah, I can answer that real quick. Now, Tyrone is covered by 3 insurances. Tyrone is covered by CareFirst, Blue Choice, CareFirst through my job. Tyrone is also covered through Medicaid and Medicare. Tyrone has 3. So this is the trick they played after Obamacare came in. Before Obamacare came in and before Tyrone turned 21 and had to take his father benefit, which was Medicare,
Yep.
we were more coverage, 100% between medical assistance and my health insurance.
Right.
We got way more. We got top of the line medical supplies, medical care. But when we got Medicaid, it came in that Medicaid had to be primary.
Yes. Now, so it's an unusual situation where because he's your son and you can have him covered through work, typically, you know, you don't run into this situation. Usually you either have, if you have coverage available through an employer group plan, then you don't go on Medicaid or Medicare. I know this is a unique situation, and because of his age, it creates you know, a bit of a confusing one. But I mean, my advice normally to somebody would be to either have them on a individual or a group plan that, you know, you're insuring them for based on how the coverage is, or go on Medicaid. You can decline Medicaid, you can refuse it and knock it out. But you know, again, I think it depends on how good the other coverage option would be. And in any case, once the person's on Medicare eligible, and you know, then they are forced to take that and have Medicaid as the secondary in most situations that I see. And so between the two, it covers 100% when it comes to the health insurance deemed costs. So, you know, going to the you know, having a surgery or having a procedure done, or you know, getting blood work done, or going to a doctor. But when it comes to the long-term care stuff, you know, and you know, what would
the ongoing therapies.
Yeah, the therapy, that's where the real challenge comes in, is that you have the situation where there are qualifiers for therapy, and one of the main ones is that the doctors expect that there can be improvement made. And if they do not deem that the case, then all of a sudden the insurance companies, you know, and the policy on insurance in general in the country is that, you know, it's not therapy anymore if it's not something that can be improved.
I think the only exception to that is those that have mental or behavior issues, where the therapy becomes more of a monitoring situation because fluctuations can occur in the treatment. Those type of people with mental or behavioral issues have to be constantly monitored in case the medication goes off.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny because, you know, when it comes to physical therapy, they say there has to be the ability to improve. When it comes to mental health or therapy, that's not in there, right? They know people will, you know, who have bipolar will always be bipolar, and there's nothing you can do about it, for example. And so, they don't they don't disqualify that from coverage. You know, when I started selling Medicare insurance, I think it was 14 or 15 years ago, there was almost no mental health coverage. Right? Now, today, we're to the point where they'll cover therapy for mental issues, but hospitalization is limited to 190 days lifetime.
Right.
So if you had to be inpatient hospitalized for mental health, you've got a limit on the number of days. So that has come along and improved as far as the level of coverage provided in Medicare over the 15 years, but it's still not really what most people would think of as humane, really. I mean, right? I mean, it's, you know, if somebody has you know, needs to be inpatient hospitalized for mental issues, do we really want to say, well, we won't cover you after this, and, you know, good luck out there? It's an issue.
It's frequently happening because they're trying to they'll literally go to court to force you to receive this person back or to put this person back in the community without the reasonable things in place that they need in order to function.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting. I didn't know the whole background of the, I guess, I don't debate or discussion today,
Oh,
other than GoFundMe versus insurance. And so
right.
without knowing what the whole story was, I was sort of thinking like, well, that's not even a question in my mind. Of course you would get insurance. But I guess the bigger issue here is that even with insurance and with even overinsured situation,
Right.
like the young man we're talking about, there are still things that are not going to be covered. And it's the same way with cancer. There's a lot of people that I have clients who have go through cancer treatment, and they can have the best insurance available and there are still a lot of things that that cancer treatment can require that is not covered by any insurance. So we sell policies. What's that?
Such as?
Well, for example, in a lot of cases, people lose their hair with chemotherapy, and there's very limited resources to give anybody anything to help with that cost of getting a wig or getting
Right.
treatment or medicine that would maybe help that regrow. Another one is I had a client who had a brain cancer. There's only 3 places in the country that would provide the proton therapy. At the time, there wasn't this, they have it now at University of Maryland in Baltimore, but at the time it was Mayo Clinic in New England, one place in Ohio, and one place in Texas that had these machines that would be able to give therapy. And his insurance covered the therapy, but they had to go and stay for 2 weeks to be there every single day at this hospital. Well, how are they supposed to get there and stay there? And what are they going to sleep in the hospital for 2 weeks? I mean, it was, so they had to obviously travel. They had to be put up somewhere, to do that. And all of those costs were not covered. Their food while they were traveling wasn't, you know what I mean? There was a lot of expense to the family that was not able to be, there was no help other than, different funds you could apply for. There's different, organizations that would give grants.
So what is their alternative? And just listeners, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can give us a call at 410-481-1010. Is that right, Taylor? 410-481-1010.
That's right.
Or you can text the office at 443-660-7131. We are monitoring your text and we'll ask your question if you send it in. What is the alternative? Because if you can't get an insurance policy to cover it, I know that
Wait a minute. Can I say one thing?
Yes,
you can't get
ma'am.
insurance policies to cover that, and nor can you get life insurance when they're in that condition either.
Well, actually, you can, depending on the severity of it. So we can talk about that.
Tyrone.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the therapy and why Medicare is not covering, because they say it has to be an improvement for them to retain something back to receive therapy. But what they're not understanding is to preserve life and maintain them in the best condition that they are possibly in, and to keep those muscles strong and functioning open. Those therapies were very much needed. Now, Tyrone hasn't had those therapies in almost 4 years. Now Tyrone's spine is curving. Now Tyrone's curving to a fetal position because he doesn't get the standing position.
Which you're saying is going to cost even more medically. Because ultimately,
it causes
treated for that instead of being prevented.
And it could have been very well prevented, because now his feet has dropped again, which he'd already had 2 foot surgeries to hold him straight. So but because of his tone is not being maintained through the therapy.
With regards to that, if you get a doctor that's willing to go back to you to say this is preventive as far as the management of his state, there are exceptions that can be made, but you got to get a doctor that's willing to document this therapy in detail in order to show that it is a Medicare preventive service. Isn't that right, Jay?
I did that. And the response we got was it took us 10 years to just get a power wheelchair. It took us 10 years to get a power wheelchair.
I understand. I am in a situation
And it was
right now.
a back and forth. There was a back and forth, appeal, doctor. Medicaid fought us for a power chair tremendously. And they spent the cost of 3 wheelchairs, 3 manual wheelchairs before they realized they had to give him a power chair. Now, you're not supposed to get a new wheelchair until every 5 years. Tyrone was granted 3 wheelchairs within the 5 years because 1, he maxed them out. He broke them. Some he was too heavy for. He grew too tall for one. He was supposed to be custom molded to a power chair.
I understand.
Medicaid refused for 10 years.
I understand, especially, let me tell you something. I live in Carroll County. One of the reasons why I came out here to Carroll County is because I found that the services that I needed came quickly and easily out here than it did in Baltimore City or Baltimore County, for that matter.
Yes.
And
yes,
so
that is absolutely true.
And I'm in a situation where my husband had a stroke last August, and we are still waiting on his own wheelchair.
Yes, I can clearly.
And they wanted to give him a powered one, and they just knew they could get it. And you're right, there are a lot of requirements. Medicare requires 3 independent evaluations by 3 independent physical therapists in order to determine whether or not they qualify.
He's called enough to operate his own power chair. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So I'm aware. I just got to the point where I said, no, can we just get a regular wheelchair, his own wheelchair? Because by the time you get him the chair, he's going to be walking with a prosthetic. Okay, he's not even going to need a chair. He's going to be walking with the prosthetic.
Correct. And I mean, the time frame, the turnover for Medicaid to issue the clients what they need. Matter of fact, we've been waiting. We waited on a hospital bed. Matter of fact, we're waiting on one right now. Tyrone broke the replacement hospital bed that they gave us. I didn't even ask for a new hospital bed he's supposed to get one, I think, every 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. I think this is a requirement. I didn't ask for a new hospital bed until 8 years later.
Why?
Because we were once supplied with Hillrom. Hillrom was a supplier before Obamacare came in, which was a top of the line medical equipment bed. That bed was made almost out of iron.
Right.
We're still operating on that frame because the new program after Obamacare, the quality of the companies they went with to supply Medicaid consumers, the quality is beyond low budget.
I understand, girl. I just ordered mine from Amazon.
It's so low budget that the company they're going with now is Drive. And the metal is not metal, it's aluminum metal.
Right.
It's a sheet metal.
It's easy.
Yeah. It doesn't even hold it doesn't even hold the motor to turn the bed up and down or to raise the legs or the head. And it just breaks. It sounds like a motor machine in your home trying to crank up. It sounds like a motor. And the bed is so skinny. It's so skinny that my child felt so uncomfortable. All he did was whine.
Right. So look, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a break for station identification. We'll be back in 1 minute. Listen, when we come back, we're gonna keep talking about Medicare We're gonna let Jake tell us what our options are and what we can do in order to get some of these things covered, if at all possible. All right, thank you. We'll be right back.
WOLB Baltimore and WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore, celebrating Radio 1's 42nd anniversary.
Our Radio 1 family, our employees, their family members, our listeners, our viewers, our extended family.
And serving the African American community for over 42 years.
The views and opinions of the guest and host you hear are not necessarily those of the staff and management of Radio 1, its sponsors, or advertisers.
As the road you travel changes, so can your insurance needs. Talking with Farmers Insurance agent Ramona Jones McClain can help you assess whether you're ready for the journey ahead. Call Farmers agent Ramona Jones McClain today at 443-660-7131. That's Ramona Jones McClain at 443-660-7131.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Hello, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru. I am a farmer's agent located at 11707 Ricerstown Road in Ricerstown, Maryland. Here, you can call me at 443-660-7131 or listen to my show every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on WOLB.
All right, you're back live in 3, 2, 1, whenever you're ready.
All right, DMV. This is Ramona Jones McClain, your insurance guru, and we are here today discussing Medicare and versus GoFundMe. We have a guest with us that has a GoFundMe page set up to cover costs that Medicare is not covering. We also have our guest with us, our specialist, Mr. Jake McGoy, who is a specialist in Medicare insurance and has been offering it to the community. He is with the Ritter Insurance Marketing Group. And Jake, so you've heard everything that our guest spoke about, and I know that there are some limitations and some exclusions when it comes to Medicare. Medicare, however, does have some exceptions, and the exceptions include preventative services, transitional care, chronic care management, and advanced care planning. Not barring the specific situation, is there any part of her scenario where the Medicare should or can possibly be covering it? And if not, what are the alternatives with regards to insurance that may be available?
Well, so there's a couple of different things that come to mind with this. Medicare itself, original Medicare that's provided by the government as the primary insurance, has one set of rules and guidelines in how they cover issues. There are definitely some limitations there that come into play with this particular situation, with therapy, with durable medical equipment to some extent. But I would say that in this, because this is a very unique situation, I think that, one avenue that could be taken, I don't know if it has already, but is to, you can of course appeal decisions, but it also really helps to have a doctor and even an attorney involved in, in making the argument about certain things being covered. One thing that you could do is with Medicare Advantage plans, they do have a whole different set of criteria. They oftentimes do go beyond Medicare's normal limitations in things like durable medical equipment, which the wheelchairs, the power wheelchairs, the beds, the supplies, as the caller or the other guest mentioned. In previous situations, prior to Medicare, there were situations where the private insurance or Medicaid was paying for, more of these types of things and more products, or more quality product in some cases. I think that can also be the case with some Medicare Advantage plans, because again, they are taking a more holistic approach to things. Generally, they're looking at, look, this person's going to be a member with us. What can we do to cut down on potential future costs and improve quality of life? And they're actually rewarded by the subsidy they get from Medicare based on the quality of the care that they're giving, and by the amount of different things they're doing. So it's funny that Medicare will have one set of rules for its general coverage that you get directly from them, and it's very clear cut. It's a fee for service type of program. They only recently started even covering preventative services. That only happened in the last 10 years. Before that, they didn't do any of it. But at the same time, they are what's funding Medicare Advantage. They're paying a private company that you can choose to get your insurance from instead of them. And the Medicare Advantage company is then bonused or paid more based on the health of the person and the results that the company is getting on the person's health. So it's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense from a common sense perspective, but in any case, I think that might be a way to get a little bit more access to the type of care that's needed in this case, might be through an Advantage plan. So I'd be happy to talk about that. The limitation on them is that you have a different network. Right now, if he has Medicare and medical assistance, which sounds to be the case, he can see any doctor that takes medical assistance, essentially, because almost everybody's going to take Medicare. The state Medicaid is going to be a slightly smaller group of doctors or facilities. The Medicare Advantage plan is going to have a smaller yet cross section of doctors and facilities, because they do have to contract individually with that specific company. But
that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because,
no, right, yeah, because
because like my husband's Advantage plan, because they are very specialized and specific. There are things that I can go directly to them to get where there's no fee. Where if I went outside of them, I'm paying a copay,
exactly,
and an extra thing, and all of this stuff.
Yep.
It just depends what your specific situation is, which is why you have to talk to a specialist like Jay, so he can look at your situation and say, okay, this plan does this, and this plan does that. This one may be better for you.
And the other thing that you get with an Advantage plan company is, in cases where the person is deemed, a high utilizer or in greater need of consistent care, they will typically assign a case manager. And so that person then is typically either a registered nurse or a licensed nurse practitioner who works for the insurance company and who coordinates all of the different care that's needed, tries to make sure that the different vendors that are supposed to get this and that together are getting the right stuff to them. They're checking to make sure that the meds are being picked up and hopefully taken correctly as per the different doctor's orders. They're making sure that if they need access to a different type of specialist or a different type of therapy or whatever it may be, that they get it. So it's and really, I mean, I heard the beginning, she said, mother of three, working and doing this all, I don't know how. I mean, my hat's off to you, lady. It's I have no idea how you manage all that. I probably don't do a third of what you're doing in a day, but you need basically a manager that's going to come in and say, here we need this done and that done and that done, and and that can actually.
Let me say, I'm in RIM, the RIM program.
Okay.
I have a case manager. I had another case manager that was coming from medical assistance that was on top of the situation, and she would coordinate the three insurances. But the problem came in so significant when Obamacare came in to cover everyone, so everyone would have coverage. But that system came in and there were a lot of very angry consumers about Obamacare, and they folded because they didn't want to deal with Medicare. And just for an example, Hillrom was one. Hillrom did not want to deal with Medicaid and Medicare.
Right.
So they closed out their entire residential department.
Mhm.
They sent up the ownership of the bed, and we were no longer under warranty for the bed.
Yep.
So I have been paying out of pocket to costly fix that hospital bed.
Yep.
Just because I refuse to accept the quality bed that they're sending.
Right. You know, one of the
And
things
now
that
I can't even but now I can't even get parts for that bed because the bed is over 10 years old and is discontinued.
Right. So, Jay,
go ahead. Sorry.
So I really need a bed that he could qualify for. But then I asked Medicaid because every 2-3 years we re-up on his funding money for his environmental services that he qualifies for. Well, my home don't need any more modifications. Only thing we waiting on is the electrical lift because they built us a platform on the back of the house.
Right.
But that one particular with the DAC platform and the wheelchair lift, it came over his allotment of services. So I was like, well, put half in this year, and when our allotment renews, we'll get the wheelchair lift.
Yep.
But there's going to be extra money left over.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need that for the wheelchair lift for the vehicle that is now expired. So I bought this, the first van, the DDA, a program in DDA bought the first van for us.
Mm-hmm.
And they bought us a brand new Town and Country minivan, $23,000. And they bought a lot of people wheelchair vans that had qualified for medical appointments, for extensive therapies, and to keep us in the social setting. And that was a significant help. But that was some misused money that they had in the funding that they did not use properly. And I think it was something like $500,000 that was left over. And they had to figure out in quick what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to spend it before that physical year was out. So they helped the entire community with that funding money. And that's how a lot of us parents was able to get them handicap vans.
Yep.
And I'm like, if all this funding money, why is that not conjunction to Medicare when the government has the funding and they're not giving it to these disabled families? We got stuck. We had a mobility taxi care card. And look, I worked for the transit company.
Mm-hmm.
And the taxi care card, we called a cab. It came and picked us up and transported us to Karen Ann Hospital. Our appointment was for 11 a.m. They picked us up one time and they dropped us off at the appointment. We had a 1 p.m. pickup to pick us back up and return us home. They left us stranded. We called every 15 minutes. The cab is returning. He's en route. We're short-handed on a handicapped driver. He's coming. He had one more. Long story short, this went from 1 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. It was 101 degrees outside.
Wow.
The nearest bus stop is 1.5 miles away. So I have all Tyrone's medical equipment, his oxygen. So how am I supposed to get him 1.5 miles away in 101 degree weather?
Right. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So Jay,
We called so much that the cab company.
Gotta get ready to go soon. That's okay. What alternative do we have? I know that there's critical illness policies that may be available, but that's only, you got to be a certain age to get them. You mentioned life insurance. There is a program called Greater Death Benefit. that that your son actually could qualify for now.
Yeah.
A lot of companies reduce the age from 40 down to 18. And as long as he's not in like a nursing home, he technically can get life insurance. It won't be a whole lot. But
yeah, there was one policy that I did have, but he couldn't be hospitalized within 3 years. It would only cover up to $10,000.
there are other
Yeah.
policies. Yeah, there are other policies out there that he can still
Yeah.
qualify for.
But
what
by the
other
time you
insurance-
take that policy and you pay that money, you might as well pay that direct to a funeral home.
I understand. The difference is it's income tax free. Instead of you saving it and putting it away, there's no taxable gains, there's no inheritance tax. It's income tax free. That's the difference between getting life insurance and just putting it away. But what other coverage is available that can be gotten to cover or subsidize some of these costs, Jay?
Well, yeah. So there's, I mean, ahead of something like that happening, there are critical illness and accident policies that people can get for very little money, that would have certainly helped in this situation if they were in place ahead of time. There is, as I mentioned, with cancer situations, I have run into a lot of juvenile cancer scenarios with clients, and so there are cancer policies that we sell that are, and I'm sure you probably have as well, that are an indemnity policy. Again, it's this happens and we pay out this much money type of thing. There's no,
Right.
and it's not taxable. It's a benefit that you get, and it's paid out. So there's that type of thing. And then, again, for the actual health situation, I do think in this type of scenario, that I think it would be worth exploring some advantage options for Tyrone, just because, I think that getting that level of care might be better. Right now, Medicaid, as she mentioned, there was a Medicaid case manager. Medicaid is not making the healthcare decisions or approvals on things happening because they're not primary now.
Right.
So they're following suit with someone else's decisions,
Right.
on what's covered and what's not. And so that's the key, is if you change the person or the entity making the decisions about what's covered and what isn't, Medicaid will follow suit and pick up the other 20%.
Right.
And those Medicare Advantage plans are coordinated. There are ones that are coordinated with Medicaid. So, there's no difference in the 100% coverage on the actual healthcare costs themselves. When I say that, I mean, the doctor's visits and lab work and that kind of thing.
Right.
But the decisions about what is covered can be a bit more lenient. And so anyway, I think that'd be worth some exploration.
Definitely better examined, because even, and I agree, when we quote unquote first got Obamacare, a lot of companies freaked out and got out of the market. That's sort of leveled out at this point. At this point, you got companies that are coming back in. Yeah. You got companies that are providing services that they weren't providing them before, and it's not common knowledge, but it is easy to find out who's doing what and who has access to what.
And not that I want to defend Obamacare in any way. I'm not trying to argue for the government or for anyone else, but I will say this: when all of that came down the pike, I remember specifically a particular program. They did a test program in the market. They used the Pittsburgh and like a surrounding area in part of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Ohio. And for a district that they had set out, they said, okay, we want to see right now, what are we paying as, Medicaid and Medicare? What are we paying for diabetic supplies? What are we paying for wheelchairs? What are we paying for CPAP supplies? And they looked at the prices that they were paying for these consumers or members to get these things, and then they looked at what they cost if you went to the store and went to buy it, and the government was paying 2 to 3 times what a consumer was for the same product. And all of that was because of the fact that, this happens all the time when government contracts go out. whoever, somebody gets a handshake, nod, wink, whatever, gets the deal. And then, they go out, like, you remember the TV commercials that used to be on for the free diabetic supplies? They were all over the place. They weren't even charging the people the 20% they were supposed to pay because they were making so much money on the sale from the government paying for it that they were getting more than 100% of what they were going to get in the first place, at an 80% number. So they did this, and they did a bidding program where they made all the vendors for that territory bid. And they gave it to the top. I don't know. They dropped maybe the lowest one, and then they took, I forget how they ended up doing it, but they took 3 vendors out of for each category of stuff, and those were the people that got the contracts for a period of, I don't know, 2 years or something, and then they had to go back and rebid. And they found that I think just in that area they saved like $500 million in a year on what they were spending on the stuff. So I'm not going to argue that maybe the quality is less on the bed than what it would have been before, but I would also say that that they probably charged 5 times for the bed what they would have charged somebody who bought it out of a store. So it's there's a lot of waste that goes on. So there's got to be a way to find a happy medium. There's got to be a way,
but the quality that they dropped it down to is still hurting the budget system, and it's still hurting the government's pocket.
Because I agree.
If you got a technician, if you have a technician coming out multiple times throughout 1 month, and you give him multiple parts to fix it, then you still spent the money for a better quality bid, and then you don't have the maintenance. So that didn't make sense.
Nope. I know. I get it. It's, and in that's a very specific, that's a very specific item too, that, maybe should have been looked at a little bit differently than say Lancet for poking your finger to get blood out for a diabetic strip test. You know what I mean? So it's
exactly.
People got to use common sense, but that's the problem.
This is the other catch that a lot of people are not aware of. Like for instance, by me having the 3 insurances, I get a better quality bid if I can go through CareFirst Blue Choice, which is my job insurance. But this is the thing. They will not allow my insurance to be primary, because Medicaid became primary, because if I make CareFirst Blue Choice primary, then I got to pay the copays to his prescriptions, which will run me about $600 for just one prescription.
Yeah, so that's the thing. There are some things that'll be much better on one side, and some things that'll be much better on the other. And for some people, they have, with their situations, there's an easy answer. For you, obviously, there's not in this one, because
but this is the other thing that they didn't know, that if I would have put CareFirst Blue Choice first, I would lose my nursing through REM, because that's through medical assistance. So I couldn't put my own insurance primary, because Medicaid has a block that they must act as primary, or you can't have the other services. You can get the medical, but you can't get the outside services. So I had to max out Medicaid, which is his father's part of the plan, because he's deceased. And they forced me to take it, or I lose all of my nursing, and there goes my job. So to me, it seems like they knew what they were doing. So, and then if my job became primary, the CareFirst Blue Choice insurance, and paid the better quality for the better everything that he gets, then medical assistance would have to pick up the copay, and Medicare sits solid.
Yeah, I mean, you can knock out or decline out of some of it, but then you end up losing something else. So it's a rock and a hard place. I see why you have a GoFundMe page. It makes perfect sense. I can see exactly why you have one. If you were to ask me, should I have this instead of insurance? No, definitely not, because you would never. People can't go out and raise enough to cover all the costs. But yeah, you definitely need one. I'm sorry to laugh. It's not,
I'm laughing to keep from crying, because it has now turned into a major cry. And here I am, an everyday working parent who's minimizing the cost of keeping my son. I'm actually lessening on the Medicare system because he's in-home kept.
Yeah.
In 13 years, Tyrone has only been hospitalized twice.
Have you ever brought this story in front of your state representatives?
My education and my mental status tells me yes, but then when you get to calling the numbers, you don't know who and who to get through to and how to get to them.
I mean, that's the one thing I will say in the situations I've run into, which aren't many, but where, Medicare screwed something up bad, or, something was really unjust in how it was being treated. I've told people, call the local rep for the district you live in, call their office and say, I've got this situation. I think this is something you should know is happening to people like me out here.
I called one time, and it was when Elijah Cummings was alive many years ago.
Yep.
And I can honestly tell you, Elijah Cummings came to my house himself.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, it's impressive though. The response that you get is impressive.
And he followed up. I cried because I did not think my one email got somewhere.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference. It really does.
All right, you got 1
He
minute.
helped build He helped build the entire addition to the back of my house.
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a valid place to go with it. I know we're out of time now, but I think I would definitely suggest, going down that path again and see what you can get, because they'll put it in front of Congress too and say, here's the situation, and use it as an example of why we need, to change things, why things have to happen in this country.
I get that, but real quick, we're down on time. Where is the funding to help me replace this ramp? And I have a $60,000 vehicle that's a 2007. It only has 90,000 miles. It's a GMC Savannah Regal, and the ramp company folded.
Yep.
And no longer serves any parts for that ramp. And its ramp is $10,500 to replace. They don't make this ramp anymore. You can't get any parts, anything for it.
So I think that for you, first of all, can you give us how to find your GoFundMe page?
The GoFundMe page it's under, I'm not sure how they did it because I put as me as the host, but my name is GRALEESHA, last name Prince, PRINCE.
Okay.
And Tyrone's name is TYRONE. Out of time. It's Stallings, STALLINGS.
WOLB with talk in the day and soul at night.
This is Reality Radio.
Well, we're now into the month of February, the shortest month of the year, and the only time during the year when all ethnic groups are taught about the history of our people. Our ancestors who were kidnapped from Africa, enslaved in this country for hundreds of years, are totally the economic base of the wealth of this great nation. Without the unbridled free labor requirement imposed on our people, the United States never could have become the giant of power that it is. There are actually elected officials both locally and nationally who are proposing and getting put into law prohibitions against teaching our American history, disregarding our legacy, and ignoring our founding contributions to America. The reality is, if we do not get these bigoted, anti-intellectual politicians out of office, Black History Month might once again be relegated back to Negro Week, featuring perhaps Herschel Walker.
This is Reality Radio with Kathy Hughes. What's your reality? The next disaster is coming. The time to get ready is now. Make a plan. Identify meetup locations and people you'll need to contact. Put your contact list in your wallet, on your phone, and somewhere visible in your home. Build a kit. Store enough food and water for 3 days. Don't forget your pets.
And WERQ FM HD3 Baltimore, celebrating Radio 1's 42nd anniversary.